I'm a bit nervous about being live on your Twitch right now.
Wait, why? There's only like
I don't know.
There's only like 50,000 people watching.
This is my first time on your Twitch and in person. Yeah. Well, just because he's
I watch his shit all the time.
and he does such a great Irish accent. Ireland. One thing I'm looking at for this doc we're doing is like the guys who have gone from Bernie all the way now to far right, Trump, whatever you want to call it. Why do you think that happens? Or do you just think that is men who just would always want to go to the fringes anyway, or do you think it's a sign of something more fundamental in politics?
I think the boundaries in our duopoly are completely on culture war issues. So it is oftentimes those who are not necessarily committed to a materialist framework in understanding history, in understanding politics in general, that then catch themselves in the throes of right-wing radicalization, because those are issues that are top of mind for them. That's exactly what happens like with the likes of, Jackson Hinkle, where like the other day he tweeted out, China has banned transgenders from TV. And that's really funny that he's saying that, because he's saying that it's a pro-China thing, right? Because in his mind, that's like pro-China, oh, they're anti-trans.
Yeah.
The most famous Chinese woman in Chinese television is a trans woman. Very open about being trans as well. I mean, she's obviously a party loyalist and whatnot, but like she is a trans woman. So what he's saying is objectively incorrect. But why does he say it? Because he thinks like there's this global culture war focused right-wing momentum everywhere around the planet, including in China, in a place like China. It is really interesting that he rarely ever talks about Cuba though, because Cuba is like very socially progressive in comparison to the United States. So I don't know. I think he just misses the mark, because he's very desperate to cut this propaganda that like everywhere else, like people only care about LGBT rights and abortion and these sorts of things, because it's like American propaganda, social media, and American liberal media has like brainwashed people. But I think most people want more civil liberties no matter what, and behaving as a consistent repressive force against that sort of thing is antithetical to any sort of like left-wing movement. So those guys aren't left-wing at all.
Yeah. You watch a good bit of my stuff. Thank you very much. It's good to have somebody watching. Please keep that up. But I spend a lot of my time talking to Trump supporters, trying to understand the rabbit holes people go down, why they go down them. Obviously, on your stream, you have a bit of fun with it sometimes. I think you also refer sometimes to Trump supporters as hogs. But you must feel some empathy at times, some sympathy.
Oh yeah.
When you see how far down, whether it's QAnon or even election denialism, whatever it is, that some people genuinely are. Some people genuinely believe this stuff. Absolutely.
I abide by the principles that Michael Jamal Brooks, rest in power, good friend of mine who passed away a couple years ago, brilliant commentator. He was on the Majority Report. I abide by those principles that he so perfectly and eloquently put. Be kind to individuals, but be ruthless to systems. And while I like to have my bit of fun, making jokes at the expense of people who are inherently like and overtly antagonistic to people due to their inalienable traits and characteristics that they can't change about themselves, their bully behavior, I do ultimately still want to change the minds of people, and I want to change their minds. I want to make sure that they're not falling down this right-wing rabbit hole. So I do actively, as long as someone maintains like genuine interest and charitability, I will always talk to them, I will meet them at their level, and I will try to explain to them how certain things are and where they might have been led astray. So I like to have a little bit of fun, but ultimately I don't necessarily fault individuals for going down this rabbit hole, because I understand that we're all in some ways victim to propaganda. We cannot escape propaganda. If it was something that was inescapable, it would not be a multi-billion-dollar industry. There would be no PR, there would be no marketing, right? It's obviously very effective. So I get that. And also I recognize that, especially our monoculture created by neoliberalism, I think neuters certain curiosities that people might have and very effectively dismantles any kind of counter-narrative. Like, for example, I think that there's a lot of economic volatility in this country. There's a lot of instability. There's a lot of people who are suffering, right? I think Republicans take advantage of that suffering and very quickly address that anger and use that anger to their advantage. They redirect that anger to those who are, to populations who are marginalized, and they do that very effectively. Whereas I feel like liberalism has no counter to that. There's no real interest from one party to like adequately go, no, you're wrong. You're angry at your boss.
Why is that? Why aren't Democrats better at doing that?
I mean, because they're beholden to the same corporate masters and same capital interests that the Republicans are beholden to. But Republicans, on the other hand, can and do often very openly admit that they're pro-business, and they repackage their opinions in a pretty solid way. They propagandize it in a really successful way, and they change the narrative from it's your boss that's not going to give you, your honest wage, your livable wage, to it's Mexicans stealing it from you. So they have a really solid way of using liberalism, good bad narratives, and these like spiritual, anti-materialist sentiment. They have a really good way of operating within that space and redirecting people's attentions away from the actual vectors of pain, the real oppression, the real struggle.
I mean, it's been pretty interesting trying to dig into, as I've been doing this story, digging in on the far left, as I kind of said yesterday, so far left that you're meeting with the far right.
I don't think those guys are far left.
You just think they're straight up far right?
You can't be far left, and you can't be.
You can't go that direction as well.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way, right? Like the moment that you're like hyper focused on culture war issues, you've already lost the plot.
Right.
You are no different. Like a lot of that comes from the resistance that people have towards liberalism. People hate liberals. They love saying that liberals suck. Everybody loves saying that. I say it all the time because they do to a certain degree. But it is still, at the end of the day, liberalism to hyper focus on the other side of that coin, on these groups of people that are just, trying to make an honest living in the same exact way that you are.
Yeah.
It's not like trans people are magical beings that have completely overcome the need for healthcare, or overcome the need to pay for rent, overcome the need to, work an honest wage or work an honest job. They have the exact same class interests that every other person has globally. You might be in Ireland, you might be in Zimbabwe, but ultimately every single person, or in the Appalachian Mountains, every single person still wants to put food on their table, a roof over their heads, and make an honest living, and have some nice things on the side, and have a little bit of autonomy and a sense of purpose in their lives. That's just like, that's globally the exact same interest that everybody has. So hyper focusing on these like minute differences, these marginal differences that people might have, whether it be their sexual choices, whether it be their lifestyle choices, is, I think, silly liberal shit. But on the other side of the liberal coin, which usually turns into fascism very quickly.
Yeah, maybe I'm putting myself into echo chamber here, but the more and more I talk to folks, it seems that like the two-party system in the US might not sustain, might not be around in 50 years' time. Or you think the party machine just will plow through?
I think there is no real two-party system anyway. I think most governments have some kind of theoretical democracy that they try to aspire to work towards, but ultimately it always falls short. And there is always key aspects of governance that will fall in line with the bipartisan consensus. Foreign policy being an obvious one in the United States of America. So it's not necessarily a byproduct of the duopoly here, but it's more so the reality that the Democratic Party is not responsive to the needs of the people. Because the Republican Party has figured out their own method. They're actually flailing in a different direction now because they've become too successful, and they're experiencing their own problems in that sort. Because now you have all these crazy people that are embedded in the party that just want increasingly more and more violence and subjugation, humiliation to their ideological enemies. You know, LGBT, whatever, like people that they consider morally degenerate, right? But I think that it's not necessarily the duopoly failing, because ultimately it doesn't really matter. You can have a one party, you can have a single party form of governance and still be responsive to the needs of the people in a different way. You can have a duopoly like in the United States of America.
You don't think American democracy, or at least the representation people get, would be greatly enhanced by having a multi-party system?
Oh no, it would.
Because that could then apply pressure on the more centrist side of the Democratic Party. No?
It would. However, there are parliamentary systems all around the world. They still have to create coalitions, and they still also run into the same exact gridlock problems that the American duopoly runs into as well. That's the point I'm trying to make. You have to have people. You have to have genuine pressure from the public, and you have to have politicians that are responsive to the demands being made by the people, as long as they're reasonable demands. And when you don't have that, you're just basically playing a song and dance, and you keep recycling the same old harm reduction propaganda every 4 years. As the Republicans desperately campaign, not every 4 years, but every single day, up until that very moment where the election is happening, where they try to build the solid foundation and the groundwork to capture the attention of enough people and have them be invested in this false framework, whether it be like immigrants are coming to steal your jobs, or whether it be immigrants are coming to steal your daughter and kill her. They're always on. They're always propagandizing these positions. Democrats don't really do that, and they basically rely on, unfortunately, the notion that, like, inevitably reasonable people will engage in defensive voting and will vote against the Republican Party because they've gotten completely out of control. All the while, when they do get into power, they run scared and refuse to unwind the right-wing initiatives taken by the former Republican Party that you ousted. I think Joe Biden's agenda on immigration and his change on immigration from 2020 to 2024 is a perfect demonstration of this. He ran on this, dare I say, bold, radical, anti-Trump's immigration policies, anti-border wall agenda. He was actually close to Donald Trump, much closer to Donald Trump in approval ratings on immigration than he was by the time he was forced out of the race. Why was he so much closer? Because he actually was meeting with a counter message. At the time, there was plenty of counter messaging from the media because the media was resistant to Donald Trump. Donald Trump was doing awful things like child separation as a deterrence mechanism that's like unheard of. It's Hitlerian, right? And the Democrats took advantage of that, and they said, we're going to do things. We're going to unroll all of this stuff. And then in the first 100 days of Biden's agenda, his administration, he was going to put forward a pathway to amnesty. Like, he was going to offer conditional amnesty to citizens and all of this stuff. And he didn't really do any of that. And he also, now, by the end of his 4-year tenure, turned around and was pushing for a right-wing immigration bill. A right-wing immigration bill that a right-winger wrote entirely, which didn't even have concessions for the Democrats, really, which is kind of crazy to me, because normally, at least under the Obama administration, the Democrats would do a push and pull. They'd be like, okay, we're going to deport a lot of migrants, but then we're going to do DACA, right? And then
you're saying there was a total capitulation.
There was complete capitulation on two fronts. On the messaging front, which I think is really bad, and there was a capitulation on the legislative front, which is even worse, because then you're normalizing the position that the Republicans have, which is that immigration is no longer about the economy, but is actually a matter of national security. Americans, for all of their faults and failures, historically, have done a lot of atrocities, but when it comes to immigration, every American kind of understands, like, we are a nation of immigrants. Like, they do. They might, unless they're like completely white supremacists and like a Tucker Carlson fan or whatever, and even Tucker Carlson, I think, will agree to this to a certain degree, that this is a nation comprised of immigrants. We all came here. Our parents all came here. That's what makes America great. And it literally does make America overcome some of these other issues that other developed nations have in terms of their population not growing, their population remaining old, getting really old. You know, immigrants have been able to help America overcome that problem, and we don't even consider that. Having said that, I think turning the conversation away from immigration being a matter of the economy to a matter of national security is really scary for two reasons. One, because obviously Hitlerian policy, but two, it's a complete falsehood. This is not reality at all. There is no empirical basis for this opinion. This is just simply right-wing hysteria through and through. All matter evidence shows that undocumented migrants are responsible for less crime per capita than natural-born U.S. citizens. So how the are Democrats just not saying that all the time? How the have they not said that for the past 4 years? When you knew that
but
that is
they're up against these images, right, of so-called caravans.
Anecdotes. Racist anecdotes.
But they haven't found a way to counter that.
They have just never countered it. That's the problem. They completely gave ground on that front. They do it all the time. They do that with the crime panic. They just let these things subside eventually, or worse, sometimes they just take ownership over right-wing policies. Like Bill Clinton did this too in the '90s, like with the crime panic.
When you I mean, you mentioned there about Hinkle putting out a possible misinformation about trans people in China. I haven't seen that myself, but I'll have to take a look. A lot of people are getting their news from you, not from people like me.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've been pretty transparent about times you've messed up or whatever and saying, right, correct you, but what responsibility do you feel you have when you are, because I mean, sometimes you're just scrolling, right, or you're coming across stuff and you're learning stuff in real time.
Yeah.
I have the benefit of, we tape stuff, we go back and research it, etc., try to get it right.
Yeah.
That's you're in a tough spot when it comes to consuming and also basically publishing information in real time. How much do you think about that?
All the time.
This could be Mike Lindell calling me.
It weighs on my conscience heavily.
Oh, Jackson Hinkle. Jackson Hinkle, I guess,
He's
is
probably watching.
Yeah. Do you want to talk to him?
Not really. That is to say that I don't always refuse to talk about or to these people. Once they reach a certain barrier and they start getting mainstream recognition, then I feel like it's misinformation that must be dealt with. I will say this. There are a lot of people that work for the American Enterprise Institute, that work for FDD, and all these other neoliberal institutions that are on the payroll of the American government, or at least working at the behest of the American military-industrial complex, that say a metric ton of propaganda that is never considered propaganda in that same vein as what Jackson Hinkle is doing. He happens to do it for America's foreign adversaries, so of course everyone immediately reacts and goes, oh, that's an agent. Now, I don't even know what his background is in terms of like if he's getting funded by foreign governments or whatnot. But I do see them in the same vein. Like, I don't see Jackson Hinkle in a way that is any different than like a dude working at the American Enterprise Institute that's like consistently talking about how America has to nuke Iran. You know what I mean? As a matter of fact, I would say that given his allegiances to countries that have less power than the United States of America, his overarching like footprint on the world is nowhere near as damaging as someone who is willingly a participant in American imperialism. That's also the other reason why I don't really talk about him.
All right. Okay. Well, I hear you.
He also loves clout too much. That's why he's calling you nonstop.
Something changed on the left during COVID.
Oh yeah. Sean, socialist. Say hi to the Twitch audience, Sean. Sean's a dad of 2. Well, we think they're his kids. Anyway,
What did he say?
So, but, oh yeah,
What's
sign
up?
that, yeah.
Sure.
You want a CNN autograph too? Cool, yeah. Cool.
Bro, don't say CNN
No,
autograph.
it's totally fine. It's totally fine.
Say it's the Donie.
He probably thought you.
Here you go.
No.
Say it's a Donie O'Sullivan.
I just think CNN. Obviously, COVID changed, the world changed, but
Yeah.
a lot of the people, actually some of the people we spoke to who were, again, far left maybe, how big was the change during COVID when it comes to the left? And I hate to kind of just blanket that, but you know what I'm saying.
I can't speak for the
There was
entire left.
there was a radicalization on the right when it came to lockdowns and it came to masks, right? Like there was, that really activated something.
Yeah.
What about on the other side?
The American project hinges on being able to afford your treats. The moment that your access to your treats that are affordable are restricted, society collapses. Because then you're like, well, what the f am I doing this for? You know? I have a job, no future prospects, barely can make payments, but at least I can go to Applebee's and get $5 jalapeno poppers, okay? And hang out with the boys and slam a couple brews. COVID broke that a little bit. All of a sudden, everyone was like, well, okay, what's the whole purpose of this then? If I can't have my treats. I think that was like the breaking point for a lot of people. Then also there's like the underlying unexamined and undisclosed genuine anxiety that people have in terms of like big pharma, right? Because like that's a very real and dare I say valid opinion to have, that you're like, what the f-? Like we're putting a price on like curing people? That sounds insane. It sounds actually antagonistic to human nature, right? So a lot of people that have that resentment don't understand why they have that resentment. And right-wingers are so quick to be like, yeah, it's because they're turning you gay and autistic with vaccines. Big Pharma's bad because they turn you gay. And it's like, it breaks people's brains because they're so primed. They're so resentful, they're so angry for obvious, understandable reasons. And no one is like telling him, no, dude, it has nothing to do with like turning you gay. Like the COVID vaccines were literally billionaires were skipping the line to get these goddamn vaccines, Rupert Murdoch included. The reason why they wanted you all to be vaccinated is because you're cattle. You vaccinate your cattle. Why? Because you don't want your cattle to die. They didn't want you up the hospital system that was already, on its last leg in many parts of the country. And they wanted you to get back to work after 3 days rather than taking 3 weeks off because you're dying.
Do you think, did you lose subscribers, fans? We hung out with a guy last week named Charm Hall. He'll be happy with the shout out on your stream. He used to love you, now he hates you. One of the big reasons he said it was you were jamming, COVID restrictions, vaccines, masks, everything down his throat.
Wait, is Charm Hall a MAGA communist?
Yeah.
So he's pro-China?
I think he's pro-China. He's pretty pro-China, right? Yeah.
So what the f does he think about China's restrictions then?
But do you think did you lose people during COVID? Not in a meaningful way.
No. The only time I've meaningfully lost a big chunk of my audience throughout these years was Israel, October 7th.
Right. What about Ukraine and Russia? No.
No.
No. I'm just gonna grab a coffee. We might follow you though.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Okay.
Is that good? You want anything else?
No, that was awesome. Thank you. Sorry.
Chat. How are you guys enjoying it?
They were liking it.
Out of left field, 10-10. Yep. Those are the best ones. What's up? What did you say? Is he still chirping? So it was COVID that caught him, huh? There's always a point. I'll tell you this much. With my audience, there's obviously a lot of passionate people.
Yeah.
You know, well-intentioned, like-minded, passionate people. And there's always one thing. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
One thing that they disagree with me on vehemently, and they carry over that passion into that disagreement. So all of these other issues that I'm advocating for, they're also on board with as passionately. But then that one disagreement, they'll go, oh, dude, I'm writing him off. And then they look for like other communities that they can find that same level of like comfort and security in. But now what they're seeking out is no longer the like-mindedness or the interest in progress, social justice or whatever. Now it's who will tell me that this guy actually sucks and reconfirm the suspicions that I now have developed over him. And I think like most normal people have disagreements, you know, they just move on. They're like, yeah, I like that guy. I don't agree with him entirely. I love Mehdi Hassan. There's certain things that he says that I don't agree with, but it doesn't matter. Like I think that he's overall a good guy. David Pakman, a great example. There's plenty of disagreements there, but I always think that he's a very cordial dude. Even if I do not agree with his opinions on foreign policy, I think he's a cordial, professional guy. He carries himself a certain way.
Yeah. When it comes to Charmhole, who was formerly a fan of yours, yeah, I think that issue for him probably was COVID, but it was also, you know, he doesn't like Bernie anymore. Why do you?
Bernie, I disagree with him on the way he's communicated post October 7. Still love the guy. Still have deep respect for him because human beings are complex. Human beings are imperfect, myself included. And I care about like the intentions that people have. I care about someone's track record. I'm not going to write them off because of a major disagreement on an issue as pivotal as Gaza. I still have a lot of respect for Bernie Sanders for his long career in the Senate, advocating for social justice, advocating for health care, advocating for free college, all these issues that are near and dear to me. And also, basically, revitalizing some semblance of a leftist movement in this country.
Yeah.
As a very popular candidate. I will always have respect for him on that front. You know, it doesn't take away those other accomplishments, my disagreements with him on the way he has communicated.
But I think the thing you said, right, which is a really interesting point, is people can find one issue they disagree with you on and kind of coalesce around that.
Yeah.
Why do you think you have that effect? Parasocialism.
That's what it is.
Explain that for us.
People develop an unhealthy, dare I say, obsessive attitude towards content creators that they see 8 hours a day. And I think it manifests itself in different ways. And sometimes people can get a little out of hand.
Right.
And it causes them to feel betrayed.
Right.
It doesn't cause them to simply feel like, oh, I have a disagreement with this person and it's fine.
Yeah.
Especially when there's a lot of back and forth communication in the chat.
Yeah.
And I directly can address those people individually, or even someone who's like-minded individually in a way that is very disrespectful and very unkind. And I think people feel slighted and develop feelings of hatred and vengeance overall. It turns.
Yeah, because
it goes from love to hate, is what I mean.
And also the way Twitch, the way streaming works, it's different to linear TV in that it's very much a one-way. It's a constant back and forth. What you're doing.
Yeah.
We'll let you guys. Are you guys walking?
Sometimes I call out people. Yeah. Sometimes I call out people, and there will be other people in the chat who are like, "Oh, I just caught a stray," because they feel like I'm saying that to them.
Okay.
Because in their minds, I am saying that to them. I'm speaking to them directly in their living room, you know. And if they see themselves as that person I'm addressing, then they will develop maybe a little bit of animosity, and that can grow and fester and cause them to maybe even go against all of these other like commitments that they might have had to social justice and all these other things, you know, and depending on which rabbit hole they go now.
And become mega communists.
Which is again undialectical. It's not materialist. You cannot be like a nationalist fascist and a communist at the same time. So I find that very funny that people try to do that. They try to repackage like this kind of like super marginal ideology every couple of years. You had the Nazballs, the National Bolsheviks before, and now they call themselves mega communists. It's fun. It's funny, but it is not serious, especially because given their oftentimes campus attitudes, they're pro-China, as am I. They are pro like whoever is against America. I don't know how they square that circle, especially when considering that
You're pro-China?
I wouldn't say I'm fully pro-China, but I would say that I think that China does a lot of things right. They also happen to run into the same exact restrictions that every other state runs into. Overall,
You're saying they're not the boogeyman the U.S. companies much? Okay.
no, not even a little bit. I don't think that they are the boogeyman.
I think that's the attitude in Europe as well, to be honest. Like in Ireland and the UK, China is not, obviously, people speak about what they do with Uyghurs and human rights and everything, but when it comes to actually capitalism, when it comes to working with Chinese businesses, there isn't that stigma, I think, in Ireland or lots of Europe than there is in the US.
And I think overall, in terms of like development, they're pretty solid. Like, I mean, they objectively have developed and brought, 800 million people out of poverty. That's like extreme poverty. That's a pretty phenomenal achievement overall. And I mean, they did that for one reason or another, but they ultimately did do that. You know what I mean? I wish we had high-speed rail, is what I'm trying to say. I want to have high-speed rail, and I want to punish billionaires that sell spoiled baby formula.
But you would have.
But not mass surveillance of
I was going to say, I mean,
not mass surveillance
you
of like.
freedom or you want high-speed rail?
That's a hard bargain, man. I don't know. I think overall, that's why I'm saying, like, there's obviously things that you can criticize about China that are perfectly valid. It's not like you get high-speed rail, but you also get like, re-education camps and like mass surveillance of an entire group of people because you consider them to have like significant numbers of separatists. You know what I mean? Like that's still ridiculous. You can't do that. You can't do collective punishment. It's unacceptable in America. It's unacceptable in China. It's unacceptable everywhere. I don't think that is the two different sides of this equation, I think we can have freedoms, individual freedoms, and we can have high-speed rail, and even development in general.
You got the Amtrak recently?
I mean, America is the worst example of this. We have the most, and we do the least with it,
Yeah, I guess. Well, I think...
Is that good?
We'll just, are you guys going back in? We might just follow you in if that's cool. Do you want me to give you the back list? Okay, cool. Well, the My Pillow guy might want to come in with you.
Oh my God! And then I have to tackle him, and then we kiss passionately. Now that he doesn't have a mustache.
Well, I don't view you as one of the misinformers.
No, I know you don't view me as one of the misinformers.
But it's been. Yeah, because I normally do a lot of stuff, obviously. Objectively, there's a lot more misinformation on the right.
Yeah.
Right?
You're absolutely right about that. And that's kind of part of the reason why I think like the MAGA communist stuff is like the higher priority does not become the communism, it becomes the MAGA.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying like one thing that people always tell me is, Son, you're a grifter. You're a grifter. You are you're a leftist for money, which I think is laughable. Because why the fuck, if I was going to grift and I didn't genuinely believe this stuff, which I've been saying when I was broke for the past 10 years, right? And I'm still saying the same thing.
Yeah.
But if I was going to grift, why wouldn't I grift to the right? They are the easiest audience to grift to. And there's a lot of money. Like, there's moneyed interest. There's moneyed interest at play. You know? Ain't no billionaires going, yeah, let's fund a guy who says billionaires shouldn't exist. But they absolutely will fund a guy who says, yeah, it's not the billionaires that are the problem. It's some Jewish billionaires, maybe. not even Sheldon Adelson or Miriam Adelson. George Soros. You know, not the ones that fund the Republican Party. And not like the Christian billionaires.
Do we need to take the lav off him?
I already took it off.
Okay, so we can walk in?
But also, yeah, it's not the billionaires that are like ruining society, designing legislation that harms you. It's actually Guatemalan migrants, which is such an insane thing to say. But when you say it, you make a lot of money. Oops. And you never see someone grifting to the left. You always see people who are maybe on the left turn weirdly right-wing. You know?
But it goes back to the point you said yesterday also about genuine influencers, genuine activists, that there isn't as much infrastructure on the left.
Yeah, because it's grassroots. It has to be.
No, this is where we leave you guys, I think.
And I can ask the DNC people as well.
Okay.
If you want.